This is the Invincible podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're back with the third episode of Invincible. Who you calling ugly?
Hey, it's Mark Grayson. Mark Grayson.
Who?
Mark? From school?
I know, I'm just messing with you. Oh God, you thought I was serious.
Oh, no. I got it.
I was wondering if you were gonna call.
Don't you mean when?
Nah, I can think of a few reasons for if. I came on too strong, you've got a girlfriend, you're lame and you don't like chicks who kick assholes in the balls when they threaten you. You're terrified of me, aren't you?
No, I think you're amazing. That's why I'm calling to tell you that. I mean, that's not why I'm calling. Not that that's not true. Sorry. It's been a weird day.
Sounds like it. You want to start again? Hey, handsome Mark Grayson, what's going on?
I was thinking finals are coming up and we're both in Miss Walker's Global Issues class. Maybe we can go over everything together?
A study date? Well played. Safe and responsible, no pressure, but with potential for things to move to the next level. Smooth.
Welcome back to the Invincible podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Invincible, episode 3, Who You Calling Ugly. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
I am your other host, Chris.
Excellent. Well, you've probably stayed with us. Well, I hope you've stayed with us all day, listening to us about the first 3 episodes of Invincible, which were released on Friday, the 26th of March. It's been a lot of fun going deep into the cartoon or the animated version of Robert Kirkman's comic book series. It's been got a lot of fun.
Yes, this has been, for me, I'll go as far as to say, like, this is almost a dream come true in that they have encapsulated in this first 3 hours what I expected from an Invincible cartoon that I never thought I would get.
Excellent.
I think that's the best way of putting it.
That's a good starting point, definitely, after 3 episodes. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe to us over on tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can find us on any good or villainous podcast catcher. Just look for TV Podcast Industries or the Invincible podcast, or as you're probably listening to us on the Boys feed, you can subscribe to us on there as well. If you want to send in any thoughts about Invincible before the next episode, you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this interesting new show from Robert Kirkman.
Yes, and don't forget, if you would like to support us, you can head on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where for just a single $1, you can help keep our producer in caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is especially needed as he has edited 3 amazing episodes for this release today. Will be tomorrow editing our Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then on Sunday we'll be editing our Pennyworth podcast. Yes, we have 3 podcasts on the go right now, ladies and gentlemen. 3 amazing podcasts. We are covering your DC, your Marvel, and your Skybound comics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know what's really interesting? We did get an email in about a week ago from one of our listeners asking, would we cover Invincible? And I said, no, we don't have time on the schedule. And then watched the episodes and went to Chris, I think we should cover this show.
Surprise!
Well, let's jump straight into it. Once again, the show is created by Robert Kirkman, Corey Walker, and Ryan Otley. This episode was written by Chris Black. He was an executive producer and writer on Robert Kirkman's live action show, Outcast, and also worked right back in the day on Star Trek Enterprise. That's a Star Trek cast in the credits for this show as well. So 3 members of various different Star Trek crews. So I like there's the little connection there in the writer's room as well.
Yes.
And once again, this episode directed by Jeff Allen, who we spoke about last episode. Chris, do you want to give the synopsis for this third and final episode of the initial 3 episodes of Invincible?
Sure. Mark has to cut a study date short to help save Mount Rushmore from a crazed scientist, while Robot deals with drama as he assembles a new team of world-saving superheroes.
Short and sweet, as always. Let's talk about the story for this episode. I just called this the dating episode. none of that really even mentioned. The study date is mentioned
Yes.
in the synopsis, right? But this feels like the dating episode. This feels like it's something that would appear on Valentine's Day if it was a traditionally released show.
Yeah, it's also the one that it's kind of setting up the love triangle of the person who is dating Mark, i.e. the human, versus also the person who's interested in Invincible. Or who understands that element of it in Eve. And it's that kind of, we always used to get those. So in your Black Cat to your Spider-Man and your Mary Jane, the one who never knew the secret identity and the one who, or the secret superhero and the other one who did and understood that superhero life of theirs.
Absolutely.
And that's this one of the fun parts of this, where the whole thing about Invincible was, it was a comic book, and it took a lot of those core concepts, the superheroes, what would happen, and unlike The Boys, which is what would happen in real gritty, realistic life, this is more, okay, what would actually happen if we took that trope and made that one trope and made it somewhat more rational.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. And it is an interesting one. It's kind of one of those moments where Mark has pretty much gotten everything he wants. Mark, the way we were introduced to him was that he was a little bit unlucky in love, let's say, kind of pining after a number of women in school, hoping that somebody would give him a number. Now he's gotten to the point where he is invincible with superpowers, and now he's got 2 women interested in him, so it's kind of, he's kind of getting everything he wants, but that's not really what you want. You only really want one girlfriend, and now he has 2 potential partners, especially here with Eve, because Eve kind of was cut off from him instantly when they met, because she was going out with someone already. She was going out with Rexplode already in the teen team. So, that ends in an interesting way, for this episode with Rex apparently telling, Duplicate that, well, it doesn't matter because Eve's already going out with Invincible, so I'm allowed to do whatever I want. And he's having a threesome, onesome in the shower with Duplicate, right?
A quadruplesome.
Yes.
A quadsome, if you will. This is ripped straight from the comic books.
Right.
And this was I say it was ripped. You never saw anything, just in case anyone wants to, suddenly runs off and tries to grab that issue. You see nothing. It's essentially the same scene.
Yeah.
It's just, this very much sets up Rexplode, the character, in that he was always, I think in our last episode, you referred to him as a jock.
Yeah.
He is. He's the jock superhero. He's the loudmouth, brash. He lies. And the best scene and the best kind of character explanation is there's 2. One, when Eve storms out after the bathroom scene, he turns to Eve and says, "It means nothing. Kate means nothing." And when Eve storms out, he turns around and goes, "Well, I just lied. I just said that for no reason. It's fine. Like, we good, Kate?" And again, it's like this kind of compulsive lying.
He even says to her, these 2 aren't even the real Kate. And she goes, "No, all of us are the real Kate. That is the superpower," basically. So he doesn't even understand her at all. So,
no.
You're right. I really like those scenes there. That's kind of the outlying arc of the show, I suppose, is the dating part. But there is loads of other interesting stuff that goes on. And I suppose the bigger story let's talk about in a separate point is Robot has been tasked with setting up the new Guardians of the Globe. So we have the trials of all of the superheroes, who are potentially around the world, or at least around the country, coming in and trying out for these big, boots to fill as the Guardians of the Globe. They seem to be this big, massive Justice League type team, as we mentioned before. So a very well wanted job. I like Invincible kind of walks into the room and says, "I'm not joining up a team, but I wouldn't miss this for the world." Watching all of these superheroes try out, it sounds like a fascinating idea. And he's not wrong. They do play this out quite well in the episode, where we have superhero versus superhero battles to see what kind of powers. I love when comic book artists and writers get the opportunity to explore multiple types of superheroes and superpowers, and pitting them against each other is always good fun, right?
Fantastic. This is this is the part you don't see in like the Avengers or in the Justice League, where it's like, okay, we need to know how you would fight this person. And it
Poor Google doesn't understand. We'll explain it to you, Google.
We'll explain to you right now. It's that you have Robot talking over the kind of montage, and it's fun because he talks about the brute strength. He talks about the outthinking your opponent, like what we see with Shrinking Ray, and then everything to kind of the last two, where it's Samson and the lady in electricity. I don't know if you know who that character is. I need to double check. But essentially, he helps her up.
Yes.
So it's showing that it's kind of like, it's a montage while also kind of explaining what it means to be a superhero on the Guardians of the Globe. So that kind of like exposition dump.
But done so well because it's so dynamic and because it's showing you wonderful superpowers. I absolutely love Shrinking Ray using her Ant-Man-like abilities or Atom-like abilities, shrinking right down, going inside her opponent's body and making him throw up and fall to the ground. It's just really interesting that that's a way you would use those powers. It's quite funny. My favorite of the new characters that we have in here, I'm going to have to call her out. I absolutely love Monster Girl. I think the concept of this character who can transform into a monster, but the ultimate cost of that is every time she transforms, she loses years off her life. When actually she's 24, she now looks like a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or a little around that kind of age. So I love that kind of idea that this is the cost of the superpower, and the kind of pushback to Robot when he says that they're supposed to be training 3 times a day, and she's going, if I train 3 times a day, you're going to be changing nappies next week. You know, it's a very, very fun little concept.
I loved Monster Girl. So the character for me has always been this fun element because she's essentially, it's a Hulk with an additional curse.
Yes,
it's
true.
With that kind of, you Hulk out and you become it, and you see it when she kind of, her one arm goes big and she fights Explode. But at the same time, it's this, the curse element, and it's fun, it's unique, and my assumption is they'll do what they did in some of the comic books, which is they play it for laughs, which is a 24, 25-year-old mind within a 7, 8-year-old body, a monster girl's body. And she makes it a joke. She's like, I used to be called Monster Woman.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make it work. I had to change it.
And also kind of comments on the idea of how difficult dating must be for either I'm dating an 8-year-old or I'm dating somebody that's on a register. That's never a good thing. But really interesting. Again, I do really like the idea. Is there any other characters from this new team, I suppose, or the tryouts that stood out to you, Chris?
The one that's fun one is Black Samson. So we're introduced to Black Samson as he joins the team at the end. We're towards the end of the episode, but we're not given additional context into who he is. We hear some additional elements from Rexplode, where he's like, well, he doesn't even have powers. His suit's his power now.
Right.
This is jumping a few steps from the comic books.
Okay.
In the comic books, we are told what has happened to him and his backstory and stuff like that. So it's interesting. My hypothesis is that this will be told to us later.
Of course.
Again, that's something I should call out to any of our new listeners. If you've just joined us for these first 3 episodes, when one of us on TV podcast interviews has read some of the source material, we won't go into it. We're not going to spoil anything for the fear of, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the comic book, because that's exactly what might happen in the show.
Exactly.
They may change it. They may change the journey, but they may end in the same destination. So we don't want to ruin it for you. Episode 3, what could happen on episode 9. Yeah. So that's one of the things we will always stay away from.
Yeah. So we'll only really talk about the comics in reference to what's been changed of something that we've already seen or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the interesting part with Black Samson is they've jumped from A, they've completely misstepped A and gone straight to B.
Right.
In terms of him joining the Guardians of the Globe. The fun thing here as well is they've set up the Guardians of the Globe. They've got the new team up and running.
Yeah.
And
which is pretty much Teen Team and Black Samson, right? and Monster Girl, right?
And Shrinking Ray.
Oh, Shrinking Ray. Sorry, Shrinking Ray. Yeah. It's pretty much Teen Team. So I like that. I like that there's a comment from Robot going, well, I couldn't just give you the positions, but I know how good you are, so you might as well come on board.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically. But there's also a little tension, there, at least on Black Samson's side, where he's looking for the leadership role because he's the eldest and most experienced of the group and doesn't believe that Robot should be the one in charge. So, I thought that was a little bit of tension that might see play out as the show goes on.
Yeah, and he also kind of is like, I can't look you in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And your ones and zeros. And it's funny because the rest of them are like, that's kind of robotist instead of racist or kind of, it's they're like, well, dude, you can't say that thing. Like, that's not, you can't go like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is going to be tension. The other big tension is Duplicate, Atomic Eve, and, none other than Rexplode.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the three of them are on the team, and you see this being played out. And now Rexplode makes another enemy, or frenemy, in Monster Girl. He's not... he's the character that you love to hate throughout all elements. And once again, the actor knocks it out. Or Jason is just... I talked about in the last episode... I love Jason in everything all the way back to the League.
Mm-hmm.
And his other, like, everything... like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and everything. He just embodies that person that is... You're just like, oh my God, what are you doing? And it's just, he somehow has managed to kind of bring that personality to just a voice acting gig.
Excellent.
He could have phoned this in, just be honest.
Yeah, but nobody really has in the show, which is really good. Everybody's doing their full acting duties of this role. Genuinely, the only reason I know this actor is because he played a character called Derek on The Good Place, and I've been sent the gif of Maximum Derek about 1,000 times. And that's how I knew who he was.
We will, as an American football fan, Derek, you have to watch The League.
I have watched The League, but I wasn't aware of him at the time because I think that show started about 8 or 9 years ago, and I just wasn't aware of him this far on. I suppose I didn't watch all of it, but I certainly know the show. One final thing I think we should call out here about the kind of setup and Robot being the leader is the escape of the twins from the prison section in the GDA. I think this is a weird moment that I obviously will play out in a future episode, but I love the opening scene, I suppose, of seeing all of these creatures being held in the capture area in the GDA. It's kind of it follows on from a scene where we had Nolan or Omni-Man beating a kaiju, the kaiju possibly almost besting Omni-Man. So we have the two leaders of the GDA saying maybe we should keep him almost on file to fight against Omni-Man if ever that is needed in the future. But that's the opening setup for it. And then we have the twins who we saw being beaten by the Guardians of the Globe being freed from their prison cells, and Robot being the one watching on. That's interesting.
Oh, I can't wait for you to watch this. I can't wait. I just can't wait for this is just, again, so good. Mm-hmm. So good. And it's, they're playing this off so early. And there's one thing I'm going to kind of call out now, which is they have set up a lot of threads within these first 3 hours so well. Like, I think in episode 1 or episode 2 in our discussion, I kind of went, I can't wait to see where they take this. Like, where are they going to play this overall arc within the first kind of season? And they're dropping the bombs left, right, and center. Like, they're
like,
giving
slow
you
down.
kind of. I'm like, well, no. At the same time, they've got like 120 something issues to play with here, and a lot of storylines. But it very much what I found was I was not expecting them to do this level of reveal on an episode 3. But if anything is going to drive people to come back for episode 4 in a week's time, that reveal is it. It is just like, oh, why? What? I'll call out very quickly one thing. I love the Mauler twins. They played so perfectly in this show. You're starting to get the kind of story here with the Maulers, which is who's the copy, who's the clone.
Yes.
They call out, they go, well, I'm the original. You're the clone.
Yeah. So I presume one of them is, or both of them are the clone. And there may be more of the twins around as well, is what I'm wondering about. But yeah, really like them. And I like that kind of interplay of you're not the leader. The only leader here is the true original of us. And that's me. No, that's not true. You're the clone. Yeah. I love that kind of little battle back and forth between the two of them. It's really good fun.
Yes. But this is fun, and this is going to play out. I'm so interested to see. I lie. I'm so interested to see the audience and your surprise and flummoxing as this goes on. Because essentially where we are at the end of this episode is a bad guy is in charge of the Guardians of the Globe. Maybe? Who knows? Maybe. What is happening?
Or has he set the twins out for a different reason? Are they part of another plan, maybe? Or is he just watching on while somebody else sets them free? I don't think so. I think it is Robot that sets them free. But yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting one. And again, the fact that he set up his own group of Guardians of the Globe was a really good part of this episode. I enjoyed it.
Before we move into our third and final point, the one thing I'd just call about the Guardians of the Globe is, as you said, Invincible's not part of them. Mm-hmm. Invincible was there just to watch the training, the montage. Yes. He wanted to see and he specifically calls out why. Like my father, I'm not going to be a part of the Guardians, but I'll be here if you need me. He wants to train me himself.
Yes, and that is very interesting. Yeah, we called that earlier on that his father, Omni-Man, was not part of the group, and quite evident from the beginning that he's not part of the Guardians of the Globe. Is there a reason for it? Is there a reason he chooses to not be part of them? You know, we hear in his memorial speech for the Guardians at the opening of this episode that he was on this planet fighting off bad guys. And they were also here. It's kind of the way he kind of delivers it. It's kind of, don't worry about them. They're all dead. But don't worry, I'm still here. I saved all those hundreds and thousands of times. It doesn't seem to be, I think it's kind of mixed in his words. He does know he's giving a memorial speech, but it sounds like he's much more saying, don't worry, they're gone. They didn't really do anything anyway. I did it all. So I think that's the arrogance of the character definitely comes out. And I think that kind of is part of our final point.
Yeah, and look to the sky, as he says. Mm-hmm. Before we move in to our final, the Doc Seismic.
Oh yes, of course.
What did you think? What did you think of this? This is one of the fun. This is one of the elements of the Invincible comic books I loved, which is this is your basic bad guy wants to destroy Red Mushmore, so you've got a superhero stopping him. What did you think of this?
I definitely think it's fun and does speak to some of the minor Marvel villains from the 60s and 70s. I think the Mole people who would have seen
Mole Man,
Mole Man,
Fantastic Four.
See, I didn't want to say Mole Man because all I had was Hans Moleman from The Simpsons in my head, and he's not really a supervillain. But no, it does speak to those kind of minor villains that eventually were outpaced with superpowered villains on the other side. I again, like the idea that they bring in a toll to people using their powers, you know, this concept of this guy that's able to use his seismic powers, but if he continues to use them, he'll die. You know, that's the kind of idea of this character. I thought that was quite interesting. So, but is he just trying to put his own face up on Mount Rushmore? That
was it? He's so woke. He essentially wants to tear down Mount Rushmore because he's calling them racist and slave owners and things like that. You have Atomic Eve go, oh, wait, a doctor of geology? No. Feminism, and I've got a PhD in this. It's a fun flip. Yeah. It's this kind of, and it's again, once more, a play on, this is the Kirkman and the writer's room that I'm really enjoying.
Absolutely.
Which is, Doc Seismic wasn't this in the comic books. He was that character to a degree, but they've updated him for 2021.
Right.
Or 2020 in this case. And it's a fun interpretation. As you said, it's the joke of Mole Man from the Fantastic Four, who comes from the beneath and kind of has the power to crack the earth. And they pretty much take him down pretty quickly, to a degree.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly Mark's flying back off to his girlfriend, or soon-to-be girlfriend, his date, we should say. But it's just fun. I like this, but he's dead.
Yeah.
By the end of this, like, because he kills himself. But yeah, that was something I was not expecting. Like, they kind of just let him go, and that was it. And
yeah, nice little special appearance for the comic book fans, I guess. That's a nice little one. Final point. Let's get on to it.
Yes.
Just about Damien Darkblood, we talked about him each of the episodes, in episode 2 and into this episode. Just because his investigation is continuing, and he's going to visit everybody at the funeral to find out more clues and find out what's happened. I see the callousness of Omni-Man once again when asked about the death of Red Rush, and he goes, well, he didn't really have a superpower. He was fast, but that's not exactly the biggest superpower, is it? You know, he's very just callous about the death of all of these people. We kind of see that repeated a bunch of times from Omni-Man as he talks to Mark about the loss of humans. It's like, yeah, whatever. Let's just go out and get pizza, kind of thing. You know, this is that character. He's just willing to move on. So it's interesting to see that the investigation from Damien Darkblood is now going to Debbie, his wife, to see if she is aware of anything that the world should know about her husband.
Yeah. And this is going to be I think this is the major arc of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're at the end of the first 3 episodes, I'm interested to see where they are at this point. I now think the investigation into Omni-Man is your overarching season 1.
Yes.
That is where... Now, they have not confirmed a season 2. So, fingers crossed we get it.
Absolutely.
Very much so, because I'm very happy with what we got so far. But this season 1 questioning and investigation, I think, is going to be interesting, because you saw very much... Well, outside Damien Dark asking these questions... Darkblood asking these questions to Debbie, and Debbie very much pushing back, going, no, you do have this juxtaposition of, as you said, Omni-Man being callous, being played. You can read it, he plays it in, and Debbie, like, he says to Debbie and to, you have to separate yourself from them, like, otherwise you'll never be able to do this again.
Absolutely.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other way to read that is, human life means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we're going to get this interesting seesaw, because we've seen how vicious he can be in episode 2.
Yeah.
Like destroying a whole interdimensional planet of aliens just to get home and to make sure they never attack his planet.
Yeah.
Versus we need to separate ourselves from the loss of life, because otherwise we'll never be able to do this again. So let's go. I can be back. I can be to Italy and back, and the cheese will still be bubbling.
Yeah, on the pizza. Yeah,
on the pizza. So it's interesting. He does know Damien was there, because his breath comes out.
That's right. Yes, good catch. Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see where we go in episode 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. Well, he does know about the investigation because of the funeral. And then obviously at the end, as you say, he does know he's now been in his home. So intriguing, definitely. Any notes for this episode? Anything else we haven't talked about in the episode, Chris?
Seance Dog. Not Science Dog.
Seance Dog.
Seance Dog, the master of the mystic arts, the sorceress, or the sorcerer supreme. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, our third co-host for TV Podcast Industry could not be with us for this because he is on Australia time. Mm-hmm. But this is very much one that we know he will love. He is a massive Doctor Strange fan. And in Mark's room, you see Seance Dog in his Doctor Strange garb.
So cool.
as Doctor, like with the mystic art and the paw, and it's just, I just broke out laughing when I saw this. I rolfed, lolled. It was just because I was like, this is a new update, because I don't remember Seance Dog. I remember Science Dog, but I don't remember Seance. And I was like, no, this is funny. This is like, I'm hoping that this is a running gag. They'll do like Armor Dog, and it'll be Iron Man, and it'll just be all these nice, I hope they play in this route.
In a world full of superheroes, what do? Well, you have dogs as your superheroes in comic books. Like, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Good catch. No, good catch, Chris. That's pretty much it for this episode. Overall, Chris, do you defend Invincible episode 3? Who you calling ugly?
I do. I completely. I do not call this show ugly. I do not call this episode ugly. This for me was really tight. It was where I felt episode 2 kind of got long in the tooth slightly. This got me to where I wanted it to be, and it has set up enough questions for the audience, I hope, that is going to draw the audience beyond episode 3 into this now weekly release schedule.
Yeah.
We are now into The Boys. It was 3 hours and on. And the Boys did something similar and it seemed to have worked. I'm hoping this works as well. My assumption is they'll need to up the ante each episode going forward in order to maintain that audience. But I'm very happy with what we've gotten so far. I think it's a faithful adaptation while at the same time giving it its own je ne sais quoi.
Right.
Kind of, it's its own lease of life.
Its own identity, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I completely defend this episode.
Just, speaking of superheroes with their identities, Chris, that was all.
Yes. Derek, do you defend this episode of Invincible?
I do defend this episode, and it's just a weird one to judge. I defend the episode. I think it's a really good episode, and I'm all in now. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season. But it feels odd that this is the point that they left the show for a week for people to come back next week. Episode 1 with the massive moment of Omni-Man. You want to go on to the next episode. Immediately, you have the next episode available to you. You watch that. Then there's another massive moment for Omni-Man going to another planet and causing genocide. The end of this episode felt a little bit like, oh, okay, we're there now. Come back next time if you want to. It didn't feel like that essential, I can't wait till next week as a cliffhanger moment. When you're saying all 3 of these episodes are out in one day, it felt like you should have a big moment at the end of the 3rd episode, like they did in The Boys. The Boys is the example we're using. We're on our Boys feed. Like they did in The Boys season 2, when they put out all 3 episodes, there was a massive moment at the end of that 3rd episode that everybody was dying to see, watch it and wait for next week. And everybody got freaking out, going, I want to watch it right now. Give it to me right now. We'll mark you down on Rotten Tomatoes if you don't give it to us now. So I don't know. It'll be intriguing to see how it works for this audience. Will people be really satisfied with getting 3 hours of an animated show on one day, which is something you just don't get, and then come back next week and watch the next hour, and then follow out throughout the rest of the season. So I really enjoyed the episode. I defend the episode. I'm certainly really happy with what they're giving us with the show overall. But I suppose a Love Square central plot for this episode, with lots of battling going on for who's going to be in the Guardians of the Globe. That's not as exciting as a big alien invasion, and not as interesting as the first introduction. So of the 3 episodes, this is the one I'm kind of going, all right, we're in the world now. Next week we'll have another episode similar to this in a way, but there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of where I am. So. Yeah.
My assumption is COVID.
Okay.
My assumption is maybe this was not supposed to be. This was not going to be a 3 episode drop. Maybe this was an episode 1 drop. That was your big to get you to the next.
Right.
And each one kind of built, but for whatever reason, the delays in COVID meant they're going to do a Boys style drop and drop 3.
I think this is Amazon Prime. I think they've nailed their flag now that when they have an ongoing show, they'll give you a big chunk and then follow it up with an episode a week. That seems to be the Amazon Prime way of doing things, as opposed to most of the other streaming services, which give you either the whole thing or 1 episode a week, which seems to be the way that Amazon do it. It's an interesting one, but I just don't know what the filmmakers themselves are. They told up front, you need to produce 3 episodes that will play as like a 3-hour movie, and draw everybody to come back in next week, or are they told just beforehand, actually, just give us the first 3 and we're going to stick them out in our platform. Don't do that. There's no cliffhanger in the 3rd episode. I don't know. It's a whole new world, and they make way more money than I do. So they probably have all the stats that prove it works.
Very true. They probably do. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. That is our review of episode 3 of Invincible. We will be back next week for episode 4 of Invincible. We don't actually have the title yet, so watch this space. But if you like what you hear, you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Don't forget, you can subscribe to us on any good or evil, superhero or villainous podcast catcher, or just head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com where we have all the links where you can get us. Please consider writing a review. Sharing the love is sharing the podcast. And more importantly, if you are also interested in anything DC or Marvel, on our Marvel, we're currently reviewing Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we'll have our review of episode 2 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier on our feed tomorrow. And then later in the week, we'll have our review on episode 8 of Pennyworth on our Gotham feed, as well as our main feed, etc., etc.
Our Pennyworth podcast feed. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots and lots of great comic book show content out there at the moment, and we're covering it all. Really hoping my voice can hold doing all these podcasts. I'm really hoping my editing hand can hold. So if you find anything that I've forgotten to edit out of the podcast, really sorry, but you probably understand why. I'm just hoping that we can keep you awake for the whole thing. Then, you've basically done 5 episodes this week. Absolutely.
Alone.
I never sleep, Chris. It's all right. It's all right.
It's true.
Thanks so much once again for joining us. As Chris said, we'll be back with episode 4 of Invincible next week.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep watching, keep listening, and keep destroying Mount Rushmore.
Keep not destroying Mount Rushmore, Chris.
Sorry, keep not destroying Mount Rushmore.
Bye.
Bye.